The soft hum of the airport intercom echoed through the air as rows of weary travelers waited for their flights, faces buried in screens, eyes flickering with fatigue. But amidst the blur of motion and noise, one woman stood out, elegant, poised, and unapproachable. Her name was Clara Evans, the youngest female CEO of a global tech firm, a woman whose every move was documented in glossy magazines and business journals. She looked like she had it all: success, beauty, power. But at that moment, sitting in gate C21 with her little girl curled silently beside her, she looked broken. Her daughter, Lily, was 6 years old. She had big brown eyes and soft chestnut hair that fell in messy curls around her face. And though she never spoke a word, her eyes always did. They told stories of curiosity, love, fear, and a world that she could only experience through gestures. Lily was mute since birth. Doctors said her vocal cords were fine, but her mind had simply chosen silence. As Clara adjusted her blazer and scrolled through endless work emails, Lily's small hands moved gently in the air, signing words to her mother. "Mama hungry." Clara barely looked up. She nodded, forcing a smile, and handed her a granola bar. Her phone buzzed again. Another meeting request. Another demand. Another reminder of the empire she built, but one that kept her from the only person who truly mattered. Clara's life was perfectly polished on the outside, but inside it was chaos. Grief from a failed marriage, guilt for being absent, and exhaustion from constantly proving she was strong enough to lead in a world that doubted her. She had built her life around walls of silence, until that day. Someone unexpected spoke in the same silence her daughter lived in. A CTA1. Before we go deeper into this emotional journey, take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Spark, where stories touch hearts and remind us that every soul has a spark waiting to be seen. The flight to Chicago was delayed. Clara sighed in frustration as the announcement came through. She rubbed her temples and looked at Lily, who had started playing with her doll on the floor. People glanced their way, some smiling at the adorable child, others recognizing the famous CEO, who was rarely seen without a team of assistants or cameras. A few seats away sat a man, messy brown hair, a plain gray hoodie, and a rugged backpack by his feet. He had the calm eyes of someone who'd seen life in all its shades. He looked like any other traveler, but his gaze kept drifting to the little girl on the floor. He wasn't staring, he was observing, softly, attentively. Lily's doll fell, and before Clara could react, the man picked it up and handed it to her with a warm smile. Lily smiled shyly back, then froze when he lifted his hands and began signing. "You have a pretty doll." Lily's eyes widened in shock. Then, slowly, her face broke into the brightest smile Clara had seen in weeks. Her little hands began flying through the air, answering him with excitement. The man signed again, laughing silently, and Lily clapped her hands with joy. Clara looked up, confused at first, then utterly still. She watched as her daughter, her silent little girl who never connected easily with strangers, communicated effortlessly with this man. "Are you signing?" Clara asked, her voice cautious. He turned to her and smiled gently. "Yes, American Sign Language. I teach it." Something in Clara's chest shifted. "You teach?" He nodded. "I'm a single dad. My son is deaf. It started as necessity, then became purpose." His name was Jack Turner, and though his voice was quiet, his presence filled the space like light through a crack in the wall. As the delay stretched on, Lily sat cross-legged, completely absorbed in her conversation with Jack. Clara couldn't help but watch, mesmerized. It had been months since she saw her daughter this happy, this alive. Jack turned back to Clara. "You know, she's really good at this. She signs fast for her age." Clara smiled faintly. "I guess she has no choice. Talking never came easy to her." He tilted his head. Maybe she didn't stop talking. Maybe the world just stopped listening in her language. The words hit her harder than she expected. For years, Clara thought of Lily's silence as something broken, something to fix. But this stranger saw it as something beautiful, something whole. The overhead lights flickered as rain began to pour outside, casting the waiting lounge in a soft gray glow. Jack and Lily started playing a game, signing animal names back and forth, laughing in their own world of movement and expression. Clara's eyes welled with tears she didn't understand. She wasn't used to kindness without expectation. In her world, people spoke to her because of her title, her power. But Jack, he looked at her as if he saw her, not the CEO, not the perfect image, but the exhausted woman hiding beneath it. The storm outside worsened, and soon the announcement came: flight canceled. A collective groan swept through the terminal. Clara sighed, pulling her phone out to rebook. Jack chuckled softly. Wits were stuck together for a while. They ended up sharing coffee at the small cafe near the gate while Lily colored quietly beside them. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Clara had in years. Jack told her about his son Ethan, who lost his hearing at age 3 due to meningitis, about how his wife left when it became too hard, about learning sign language just to tell his boy, "I love you" again. Clara found herself opening up too. She told him about long nights in empty boardrooms, about raising Lily alone, about the crushing guilt of missing bedtime stories and dance recitals. "You know," Jack said softly, "being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone. Sometimes it means letting someone see you when you're not." For the first time in years, she didn't have a reply. Outside, the rain softened. The airport lights glowed like tiny stars reflected on glass. And for that moment, amidst cancelled flights and cooling coffee, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Hours passed, and when Lily fell asleep with her head in Clara's lap, Jack quietly pulled a small notepad from his backpack and wrote something. When he handed it to her, she read. Clara bit her lip, tears threatening again. Before she could respond, another announcement echoed. Flights resumed. Jack smiled. "That's us." They walked together to the gate. Lily woke up and hugged him tightly before boarding. She signed, "Thank you." He signed back, "You're welcome, little one." When Clara turned to say goodbye, Jack simply nodded and said, "Take care, Clara. You're doing better than you think." As the plane ascended into the clouds, Clara held Lily's tiny hand and thought about the man who spoke her daughter's language. And somehow, her heart's too. Weeks later, Clara stood in her office, staring at the city skyline. Her assistant entered, handing her a file for a new corporate partnership. Clara opened it and froze. The organization's name was Hands of Hope, a foundation supporting children with hearing and speech impairments. Founder Jack Turner. At that moment, her phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. Clara smiled for the first time in days. She looked at Lily, who was coloring on the floor. "Want to go see your friend?" Lily's hands moved excitedly. "Yes, Mama." A CTA tuning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Spark, where stories remind us that love always finds a language, even in silence. That weekend changed everything. As Clara watched Lily play with other children, laughing, signing, glowing with joy, she realized that life's most profound connections aren't made through words or wealth, but through presence, understanding, and kindness. And when she looked up to see Jack smiling at her from across the room, she finally understood something she'd missed her whole life. Sometimes, the people who speak the least teach us to listen the most. Because love doesn't need a voice. It just needs to be seen.